Welcome to Con with John. Starting a new game. Starting a new game in Conflict of Nations is a time of excitement and wonder of the unknown. What will you build? Who are your allies? What nation will you be? It's a time when not even one person has marched a stack of 10 units through your homeland territories. And it's a time when you wonder, how will the game turn out? This video concentrates on specific things to do to start a game. The first thing to do is decide on who you are starting a game with and what nations you all prefer to play. Note that we don't always get our preference, so having backups is important. Playing with preset teams makes the game fun, enjoyable, and with higher odds of success. Working with others makes the whole experience worthwhile, win or lose. And it is nice having coalition members you can count on and rely on. One way logistically for a team of players to get a decent set of nations is for one person to choose a nation in a new game and then to have that person announce to everyone else the game number as well as the nation selected. It is then the job of everyone else to select nations that coordinate well with the select nation and in the same game. When selecting nations, there are two very important things to keep in mind. One, select nations that are close to each other. This way you can help defend each other, coordinate to take down a strong neighbor, and rescue each other when surprises happen. In the current meta of Conflict of Nations, nations often put together nice stacks of up to 10 starting units to invade neighboring nations. Having a nearby ally can be crucial in repelling such an attack and in reducing the number of homeland cities lost to an initial invasion. It can also allow not only for a nice defense to defeat the invasion, but also a counterattack to capture territory from the original attacker. A neighboring nation that is strong enough to launch an attack with a 10-unit stack is a neighboring nation that is strong enough to recover from a failed attack and to launch subsequent attacks later in the game. A neighbor that strong has to become an ally of yourself and your coalition or has to be defeated. Having other neighbors as allies allows you to fight better against attackers and gives you leverage in negotiating with them should the decision be to become allies. If worse comes to pass, it is better to have a coalition versus coalition standoff than it is to have another coalition just steamroll you. Number two, select nations that start out with a larger number of cities to start. It is no surprise that when a map is first released to be played, in a very short time, the number of players in that game increases to the mid-30s or 40s as players race to get the strong 7-city nations and the not-too-bad 6-city nations. As the number of players increases, there's a point where you will have to settle for a 5-city nation, or worse, since North and South Korea are 4-city nations. Games of Conflict of Nations take quite a while to play. Many players are willing to wait for a new game to start to get a 6 or 7-city nation rather than to settle for a 5-city nation. This is a list of the number of cities that each nation has in a World War III 4X game for the nations that have more than 5 cities. Only 8 nations have more than 6 cities. Note that Russia, US, and China, as well as Brazil and India, are nations with lots of very large provinces with very long travel times. This makes them tedious to play. It should also be noted that the US and Russia used to have a rare supply penalty. In a recent game, I checked the productions of the rare supply cities of several nations, and this no longer seems to apply. Of course, this can be changed back at any time. This is a list of the starting number of cities for the 1X version of Overkill. There are quite a few more 7-city nations than in the World War III maps. Note that all of the 7-city nations have at least one coastal homeland province. If you prefer to play a landlocked nation, then Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, Bolivia, Austria, and Belarus would be good choices, as all are 6-city nations. Note that for World War III 4X, Chad is 6 cities and Dr. Congo 5, and this is reversed in Overkill 1X. Dr. Congo has a coastal homeland city in Overkill, but not in World War III. On one occasion, I picked one of them expecting it to be 6 cities, and it was only 5. That was an unpleasant surprise. Miscellaneous pregame preparations. Keep a starting number of cities list for various maps. When you start a new game that you have never seen before, make a new list and save it for future reference. Every so often, when you start a new game, double check the starting number of cities with your list to update it in case you made a mistake or in case they changed it. After a while, if you play a map a lot, you'll just know, that is memorize, what nations have what number of cities on that map. Not to mention the general locations of most of the nations, at least the 6+ city nations. It also helps if you and a friend or friends play the same set of nations repeatedly. You'll learn various details of the game as pertaining to those nations, which you can use to your advantage to improve the quality of your play. Along with which nations you hope to be playing, a general idea of what kind of units each person will build can also be discussed. Who builds naval units? What types? If missiles fly, who builds TDS units for everyone, or will everyone build their own level 5 army bases and research their own TDS units? Possibly have one person build a lot of TDS units while someone else builds a lot of SAMs for air defense. No one can build counters to every possible threat. It can be quite useful to have one nation deal with one threat while someone else deals with a different threat. This wraps up this video. I hope that you liked it and also hope that you learned from it. Even if you use these strategies and tips against me, please like and subscribe.